So here's one I did out at the river recently. And this is just the beginning. Have I got that where you can see it?
Yeah.
It's a pretty, at this point, it's a fairly literal rendition of the landscape that I was looking at.
It's really just shapes, Marshall. I mean, it's amazing. You're just sort of defining the landscape.
Precisely. And the other thing that I'm looking for when I start a painting this way is I'll define the shapes and the values. And I'm really only concerned with three things. Where are the darkest elements in the landscape? Where are the middle tones? And where are the lightest tones in the landscape? And in this case, I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of where I want to go with the painting, but I know from experience that before long, that painting is going to dictate what needs to happen in order to bring the piece to a point of resolution for me. And that's essential. I have to love the painting before it goes out the studio door. If I don't love it, I keep looking at it until I get to the point where no more problems to deal with. I like absolutely everything about it, and then I can call it done, and it goes to you guys.
And hopefully to somebody else's house.
And they bring their experiences to conversation of relating to that piece of artwork, and maybe like that young man from, I don't even know where he was from, maybe he'll look at it and say, wow, let's step into that painting, which I think is a really neat way of looking at viewing artwork.
I think you're exactly right, Marshall, because I think with our clients, and I'm sure with folks everywhere, when you feel something, there's a it's like my favorite moment when we pull out a painting and there's a client and there's a connection that happens. There's something really that you can feel sort of in the air. I mean, that client feels the painting, whether they connect with a moment they had, it's a color that just speaks to them, whatever that is. There's that moment that happens that the client then decides, I want to live with this. I want to look at this every day. It makes me feel something. And I think that's one of the things that makes us feel really privileged to get to be the sort of conduit, perhaps, between the artist and the people that eventually get to be the keepers of that creativity. So
that's
a really neat place to be.
Yeah, that's an excellent description. And it is. It's I have a certain feeling when I look at the landscape, or when I have an idea of what colors I want to experiment with, and then I have this conversation with this piece of artwork that I'm creating, and all of the time that I'm painting, my experiences and emotions are coming forward as I make the painting, and then that goes on your wall, and the buyer comes in and looks at it, and they bring their set of emotions and sensibilities to the conversation that they have with the painting. And at that point, it's really about that transfer of information from the artist to the viewer through that piece of artwork. It's kind of an extraordinary process, really, that we're all privileged to be involved in.
One of the things that I love, Marshall, that I think is so unique about your work, because you are, and I use the word colorist, because I do think of your work and you as being a colorist. The way you use color is so unique, and as you said, you do have a creative license. It is certainly, not everything is always exactly as I may see it, but I do believe that you sort of view the world through different glasses, being an artist and being a creative soul. And so often people, will come in and they'll want a painting to, fit their space, whether that's matching a sofa or a fabric or whatever. And because your pieces are so unique and generally so full of color, your client generally isn't looking for that. They really want to just connect to the painting, and as you say, transport them into the painting or to a place that they've been, that like a song does, it just puts you in another place that just feels so good and you can get lost in. And I think your paintings being the way they are and the way that you use color allows people to do that without feeling any restraints about necessarily matching it into their space. And as an art collector myself, I just find that so it's just it's a gift.
It's interesting that you mentioned music, because being a musician myself, I do find that from time to time I need to have certain music on for the painting that I'm working on. And it might be classical music by John Adams that I listen to a lot, or it might be Chris Thile playing bluegrass mandolin, or it might be the Beatles. But from time to time, I'll have a painting on the wall that I'm working on, and you know what I really need to listen to? I really need to listen to Abbey Road right now. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that connection between music and the visual arts that it's really tangled for me.
Well, it does. They transport you, for sure.
Better way of saying it than tangled. Well, you know what? While we're talking about process, let me show you another aspect of my art making process that a lot of people probably aren't aware of, because I don't usually do anything with my sketches. But when I go out in the field to get ideas, I love to work outdoors in pastel. I shouldn't say that. I don't enjoy the process of oil painting outdoors. And the reason is, you've got to pick sticks and bugs and leaves out of the wet oil painting when you get back to the studio. It's not a pleasant experience for me. And I think what really ruined it for me was the last time I ever painted outdoors, which was probably 10 years ago or more now, outside of Jackson, Wyoming. I was painting with a friend. I leaned it up against the tire of the car as we were loading our painting rigs back into the back of the pickup. And she had a really old golden retriever who, while I was loading my easel, and he licked my painting. Yeah, but here's the good news. It actually improved the painting greatly. It made a big difference. But what cured me from painting outdoors was the fact that a couple of weeks later, she called and said her dog had passed away. And I thought, oh my gosh. Him in the red. Did he get arsenic from the green? What into that poor dog? Did I kill it with my painting? And I said, at that point, I said, I'm not going to paint outside anymore. Anyway, long story short, the dog died of old age, not from my paint. But nowadays, when I go out, I like to work in pastel. I'll show you a little sketch.
Great.
And typically I'll go out with and I put this in a frame just to make it easier to hold. But I might do, so I'm peeking behind.
We see you, Marshall. We see you. The pastel's great.
A lot of these, I might do 20 or 30 of them in an afternoon. Just real loose, rough sketches. And then I'll come back into the studio, and if this looks interesting, I'll probably do a larger pastel, or maybe go directly to a painting. But when I go out to work, I'll just grab 3 or 4 colors. And again, it's all about values. The darkest things in the sketch are the darkest color of pastel stick that I happen to grab as I go out the door. Usually I'll have a dark value, a middle value, and a light value. And that's how a lot of these paintings start. I'll do a little thumbnail on location. I'll come into the studio. If I think it has some possibility, often I'll go to a larger pastel and work out some of the problems that way. And then oftentimes that'll be the inspiration for a larger oil painting.
We're huge fans of your pastels. They are marvelous. The color saturation is beautiful. You get all that depth of color. And sometimes they're on black paper. I don't know if you always work on black paper when you're doing pastels.
Not always, but often.
Yeah, so there's a richness in the way the pastel sits on the paper. It's really...
And what I love also is with the pastels, because with your larger paintings, you obviously get the big impact of that powerful piece on your wall. With the pastels, it gives some people the opportunity to have one sort of small jewel, maybe on a small wall, or we've done fabulous installations where someone has done a whole series of them down a hallway or gridding, and then you get almost these postage stamps of sort of creating a story, and they're phenomenal.
I love the way when they're up, they look when they're displayed that way.
So Marshall, anything else you want to share or anything else you want to tell folks that
Yeah,
if they're still listening?
a couple of things. I am an avid lover of art history, and I'm an avid reader. I read about a book a week, and I'll show you the books that I'm reading right now, which I think are absolutely wonderful. And I just reread Joseph Albers' The Interaction of Color, which is kind of it's sort of the colorist's Bible, in my opinion. And the way he puts colors together are absolutely astounding and really inspiring to me. And I would urge anybody who's interested in color to pick up Joseph Albers' The Interaction of Color. Matter of fact, he's the reason I got into doing the gray paintings. I'll read you a sentence that was, in fact, the impetus for my buying a tube of gray paint, which I had never in 30 years of painting owned, never once had any desire to buy a tube of gray paint. So I was rereading his book, and he said, therefore we try to recognize our preferences and our aversions, what colors dominate in our work, what colors, on the other hand, are rejected, disliked, or of no appeal. Usually a special effort in using disliked colors ends with our falling in love with them. And as I read that, I thought, yeah, gray's the one I really have an aversion to. I've never had a tube of gray paint. So I went to the art supply store, bought a tube of gray paint, and if anybody's interested in what happened because I read that sentence, check out my work online at Merritt Gallery.
We've got a bunch of pretty ones that will show you exactly what happened.
Yes, you do. Yeah, maybe the best. And my most recent acquisition is How to Be an Artist by Jerry Saltz, who is he's an art writer and a critic, and I met him in 2020 when he was giving a talk at an event called Jackson Hole Contemporary, where I was the featured artist, and I've been following him ever since, and he's just an absolutely delightful writer. And you don't have to be an artist to enjoy this book, but I would urge everybody to grab a copy and enjoy it. It's just delightful writing.
I'm going to add those to the list. I've been ordering stuff from Amazon like crazy. Now I'm going to add some art books.
Exactly. Well, Marshall, this has been such a treat, and also just such a mental respite from everything. So needed. And I can't thank you enough for letting us come into your studio, get to just hear from you, about your process, about your work. It's just been a really nice way to spend a little bit of time today. So thank you.
It's really been my pleasure. Thank you so much for visiting. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do as I work on these two underpaintings that I showed you today. I'll drop a JPEG off to you, and you can share those with anybody who's interested. So we'll
love that. People will get the before and after.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Marshall, you be well. I wish I were in Montana right now. Maybe soon enough. But we thank you again, and we'll look forward to this journey and getting through these times and getting to the other side of this.
We'll get through it together. Thanks for visiting, you guys. Let's talk soon.
Marshall.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.